Hi, and welcome to this recording of the High Five Part 2, where we look at some of the big questions and some of the stars of charity social media. I'm hoping it's going to take about 20 minutes, and it'll give you an overview of what the presentation says if you don't want to go through it on the PDF or on screen. So, first of all, I think what's useful to look at is the questions we've got. We've got 13 in all, and the big one really is who's doing well on charity social media. We've got some really interesting stuff to do with who's performed well over the years and some changes in the different platforms, even over the last 12 months. So that's what we've got coming today. I'm going to miss out some of the particular questions because I think for the sake of timing, it would be better not to go through those. Okay, so what are the big changes in the last 20 years that social media has brought about? There's actually a much more detailed paper which looks at this and spells it out, but I think it's worth just going through these overall. So the first thing to say is that there are five big changes that we identify. And the first one is that print and word media have gone down dramatically. We can see big decreases in the number of newspapers, but actually even online, we're seeing a big decrease in the number of people who look at news and look at the word. And the converse of that is that video and social media have gone up. There's a lot more video, there's a lot more social. We've got entire platforms like TikTok have gone up as a result of social media. That also means the policy and serious news are down as well. That's in the sense that when you look at the volume that people consume, it's a lot more about people news. It's about celebrities, about individuals. And we'll see in particular just how the dominant celebrities are when it comes to social media. Social media is by and large a people platform. And within that, the royalty of it are, perhaps not surprisingly, celebrities. There have been some other things that have happened as well. Truth used to be a real hallmark of the mass media. People were wanting to make sure what they said was absolutely true. And now actually people are a lot interested in whether it's true than compared to whether it's interesting. Interesting is perhaps the key ingredient that people are saying that they are caring about. And actually, sometimes the victim, sometimes the loss of that is truth. If it's interesting and isn't true, people actually are not really so concerned as they used to be. The next big change is that we used to have a few mass media outlets. We used to have some great big papers. The Daily Mail, for example, used to have 2.4 million copies a day. It's now less than a million. But those particular outlets were hugely dominant in the way that we consumed media. And now that's very different. 70% of people get a lot of their news via Facebook, for example, if they're a Facebook user. So we have millions of outlets, millions of people around the world putting out their stuff. And that's brought about a rise of people whose entire existence is dependent on social media, influencers, they're called. And last of all, editor used to be the supreme person, the person who edited the Daily Mail or the Times or the Guardian was decided what everyone in those print versions read. And now the user chooses, or whatever you have on your social media feed and whatever I have on my social media will not be the same things. So then the next question to look at is who are the real winners in the world of social media? And if you're good at celebrity spotting, this next section is for you. But what you can see here is all the different accounts, the highest number of accounts found on different media. This is Facebook. And if you want to know who all those people are, the logos are clearly fairly self-evident, but it's down in the bottom. But Cristiano Ronaldo, for example, may not be having a great time at Man United at the moment, but actually his social media following is quite extraordinary. You have these people who have bigger numbers of followers than many countries around the world. In fact, more than most countries around the world, 153 million on Facebook alone. And you can see we've done a comparison over the last 12 months. Cristiano Ronaldo has gone up by about 30 million in the years last year. So has Vin Diesel in the bottom right. And so has Messi, again, even though his footballing career is not doing so great. What's also interesting is you look, some of these are stagnant on Facebook, but Instagram in particular appears to be a real place where there's a lot of growth in the last 12 months. Instagram, of all of the things for celebrities, at least, we see dramatic growth. Again, back to Cristiano Ronaldo on the top left. currently at 486, and a year ago it was at 352. So Instagram is the place where it's happening. Again, I hope you can identify all of these people. The Kardashian sisters seem to do particularly well on social media, and Instagram is their favored medium. Twitter, whilst it's the one that, in a sense, in the world of news that everyone talks about, and we got there in the top right, Elon Musk having just bought it all, actually, it's a fairly stagnant platform in terms of numbers, and it's a fairly low platform in terms of the number of people that reach. Barack Obama remains the top one, but you can see these numbers in the last 12 months haven't increased much, and indeed not that many people have increased their following that much on Twitter in the last 12 months. So what do we see? Well, we see that actually we have millions of people, 500 million people follow Cristiano Ronaldo on social media. And Barack Obama has twice as many Twitter followers as the population of the UK. Quite astonishing numbers. If you want to read the first part of this, where we look at some of these big changes in the first part, you can see there on screen the High Five Part 1 on Hey Hey Joe. So what about the charities that are doing well, and particularly which charities are doing well, and which social media platforms are doing well for charities? We've tried to do a bit of analysis on all the different people, and what you can see here is the top 10 on Facebook, and we're going to have in a minute the top 10 are on Twitter and on Instagram, on YouTube, and so on. Just a little bit of annotation that we've got. You can see here a green upward arrow indicates growth of more than 5% year on year. And you can see that here we are with just one, Greenpeace, who's had a growth of 5% in the last year on Facebook. So again, Facebook is a fairly stagnant platform in terms of numbers of followers. It may be the dominant platform, and it's the biggest one with more than 500,000 followers for charities. And you can see top of the tree is British Council, probably a lot to do with their language lessons, Cancer Research UK, Children in Need, Dogs Trust, National Trust, all hitting it around the million mark, but only Greenpeace is increasing dramatically. The next one is Instagram. You've got 4 upward green arrows here, so a bit more increase overall. And one of the things I want to point out here is this one on the top left, the female lead. You may already be following them, but actually they are a very small charity, about $250,000 in income, and they have achieved an absolutely astonishing social media following. If you ever want an example of an organization that can use social media to gain influence, the female lead is it. You can also see the number of increases there, people like Woodland Trust and English Heritage doing well overall, and RSPB. The next one on the list is LinkedIn. And what you notice here is every single one of these has got a green arrow on. We're seeing a big amount of growth on LinkedIn for charities in the last year. Really interesting. I suspect it's partly because LinkedIn is trying to compete a lot more. And you can see people like the female lead, again, doing really well there, have gone from 2.8 million a year ago to 3.5 million now. Huge change on LinkedIn, and possibly one of the places that are really important to be. So I forgot. Sorry, I forgot all about my Red Bull was they come out in the wrong order. Blah blah blah. My mistake. There we go. Top 5. You can see they've all increased. Mind, Save the Children, Oxfam, British Council, the female lead. Sorry about getting that wrong. Here we are on Twitter. And again, only one has seen an increase of more than 5% on Twitter, and then that's a pretty marginal increase, and I'm sure it's 5% now. I look at the figures. Anyway, the numbers for Twitter, National Trust coming out on top, but again, the numbers aren't as high either as Instagram or as Facebook overall. Here's my balls that I forget about every time. YouTube. YouTube is an interesting one because lots of people will watch a particular video on YouTube without necessarily subscribing to the channel. And that's reflected in the fact that whilst English Heritage, with all its videos, has over 1 million followers, the number 10 is down at the 50,000. So you can get into the top 10 on this social media with just 50,000 people subscribing. But that partly is a reflection of the social media channel. YouTube works differently from the others compared to, say, Twitter or Instagram. So what you see here is growth, big growth on LinkedIn. You see some charities doing well on multiple platforms, National Trust, Dogs Trust, and we'll come back to some of that. And you see some of them doing well on just a single platform, The Art of Living, WaterAid, Comic Relief, Oxfam. And our apologies, we missed some stellar performers. It's actually really difficult to make sure you've got every single big charity there without checking them all. So we hope we've got it right. Do let us know if we haven't. Does income dictate success on social media? That's the next question we're going to ask. And the simple answer is no. In absolutely no way, shape or form does income appear to dictate success. What we have is two graphs here, one of which shows the total social media following versus the total size. And you can see people are all over the place. The female lead, tiny in size, the biggest number of followers overall. You can see down here in the bottom left, all people are around the same number of followers, wildly different incomes overall, but absolutely income is not what has any dictating of success. And indeed, perhaps one of the key things to say about social media is nobody follows boring social media unless they have to for work purposes or something else. But you follow the people you think are interesting or excite you, get you things going. And actually, that by and large isn't boring organizations, isn't boring government, and isn't, I'm afraid, boring charities compared to individuals. What about the converse of that? This is the top income, the biggest charities by size, according to the Charity Commission for England and Wales. And you can see again here, there's no relationship between the size and the number of followers. Some of the biggest charities have tiny numbers of followers, like the Lloyd's Register Foundation. How well do multinational charities deal with social media? The interesting thing here is those charities have presence in different countries, have presence doing different areas, and what they do with that. And really what you've got here is two types of organization. In this chart, we look at those where the international following on the right-hand side of the screen here is doing a lot better than the UK following. So you can see WWF has a UK following of 802,000 on Facebook, and you can see that internationally on Facebook, it has 3.5 million people. So a lot more internationally than it has in the UK. And that's true for Amnesty International and Greenpeace and various other organizations who are much smaller in the UK following than they are in the international following. What you've got on this one is people where the international following is weaker than the UK following. Friends of the Earth and Save the Children appear to be two examples. What we also have, and we haven't explored at all, and it's probably quite interesting to look at, is what about those organizations who do have considerable local presence and a national thing, and how do they deal with that? How do they tackle the fact that if you have a local shop or a local visitor attraction or a local area, you want people to have local freedom to do stuff within the constraints, and how do they make sure that they deal with that? But here you see some examples of where you've got the UK is dominant over the international, Friends of the Earth and Save the Children. So the great leveling that appears to happen is that it really is not about income. It's actually not necessarily about awareness that makes you going to be have an enormous following on social media if you're a charity. We haven't looked into some of the things. It's probably worth further investigation, and it's good for another day. But to be honest, even getting us this far has taken us quite a lot of work. And thanks to my colleagues, Ellie Duncan, Anna Patterson, and Samik Sharay for all of their work to put all of this together. Are charities embracing TikTok? Well, if you want to save some time, the answer is no, they really don't appear to be. The rest of the world is embracing TikTok. TikTok has changed social media with its short, snappy videos, but we don't seem to be seeing that with the charities that we can find. Even the biggest and the best, and I say that as a female lead here, appears to be the only people who really got going on TikTok. The female lead, nearly 1 million followers on TikTok. Next is English Heritage. You can see considerable growth with those two. But here's people that we really don't see. National Trust, 4,000 followers on TikTok, mine 10,000, Oxfam 6,000, Macmillan 1.9 followers, and some of these people we can't find at all. So TikTok appears to be not something that particularly has grabbed the world of charities, which is a shame because the rest of the world will know that TikTok is the fastest growing social media platform. So how have numbers of charity followers on social media changed in the last decade? We first did this kind of analysis back in 2011 and then 2017 and now 2022. And you can see how the numbers for different organizations, this is Facebook, have changed in that time. You can see how the people are doing well. Whilst Cancer Research UK, who does well in all of our years, RSPCA did well in 2011, but has dropped down the rankings now. And you can see that people like Scope also used to do well. And so the early adopters of social media are not necessarily the successful people now, on Facebook at least. And this again, then is Twitter. Oxfam doing very well in 2011. Dropped down in terms of the rankings by 2017 and not in the top 10 by 2022. But again, this complexity of international versus domestic probably has a bearing on that as well. So you can see the growth here, and my colleagues would like to apologize for the fact in the right-hand bar chart, there are no commas on the numbers. Some technical problem made this rather difficult to achieve. So the trends are, of course, that there has been growth. There's been enormous growth in all social media. The early adopters aren't the ones who are succeeding now necessarily. What we don't know is whether those people who no longer do well is because that's a conscious choice, whether they were overtaken. In many cases, I suspect it's simply because the people, the fantastic social media managers who were there in 2011 have left and moved on and discovered they're going to work somewhere where perhaps their skills and their expertise were more appreciated. What about the pattern of posting of some top UK charities? Again, perhaps one of the single most important things is the frequency of posts. So Facebook had 15 posts between the 21st of September 2022 and the 5th of October. Again, why does it always do this? It never does it in a logical order. Never mind. 28 posts from National Trust, probably the most vigorous of posters. 4 posts on Instagram from the female lead and 18 posts from Cancer Research UK. You can see again some of the similar numbers. Again, we're seeing here when we finally get to Twitter and National Trust, 78 posts. But perhaps the single most obvious thing to say is that if you don't post anything, you won't be done. But it doesn't require a huge number of posts to get people following it. They need to be interesting. They need to be relevant. They need to be the kind of thing that people want to read about. How do charities fare across social media? We thought we'd just have a look and see how an individual charity does across the board. And we're going to start here with WWF because they have what I might call, slightly cheekily, a rather standard profile on the way they've got social media. Facebook is the biggest one, and Facebook is the biggest for charities, 802,000, Instagram 336, Twitter 250,000, down to just 26,000 followers on YouTube. And that is a fairly pattern, probably reflecting the number of people on those different platforms. In contrast here, you've got Instagram and the female lead, 2.4 million followers, Twitter just 139,000, and then again, LinkedIn, huge numbers of people. So really reaching women in a work mode in that sense. So it's really interesting to see where people clearly have made a conscious choice to go for a different kind of profile overall on social media. Again, here you've got British Heart Foundation with good work on Twitter, standing out there. Instagram not so good, and Facebook again pretty much par for the course for that size of organization. And here is Children in Need with 1 million on Facebook, slightly bigger on Twitter, tiny on LinkedIn, and pretty small on both Instagram and YouTube comparatively. So it's really interesting. It'd be interesting to know the media strategies behind these different numbers of profile, and particularly the female lead. Here's mine, the last one in the series. Again, pretty good across all of them by YouTube, about 500,000, suggesting they push them all pretty hard overall. But of course, LinkedIn as the work-orientated platform is perhaps one where, judging by these figures we showed earlier, the greatest number of potential exists. So it isn't inevitable that all your charities are going to have roughly the same numbers on roughly the same number of platforms. The female lead, which remains the outstanding organization in this, both by its size and the numbers of followers it's got, does particularly well on Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a growth medium, with Facebook and Twitter fairly stagnant from all that we've seen. So finish off, what's our advice based on all of this for success on social media? Well, the first thing to say is that social media is a meritocratic platform by and large. It's a chance for people to punch above their weight compared to governments and news media and companies, not necessarily to celebrities, but it's a chance to get a lot more even access to the world out there. Secondly, there's this notion of a meritocratic medium. Only the creative and effective succeed. Nobody follows dull social media unless it's some government outlet. And what that means is if you are creative and you are imaginative and you're innovative in use of social media, you can get a much bigger following than your size would dictate. And I'll go on talking about the female lead shows that pretty outstandingly. And different media have different strength. Almost every charity is on Facebook, but what are the other ones? And why does it appear, other than the female lead, there are very few charities that are exploiting TikTok as yet? It's an unexplored platform for many charities. So if I was going to put it very boldly, be personal, not corporate, because that's what celebrities are doing. That's what people like to follow. Tell human stories. Above all, social media is a people and potentially cute pets orientated platform. To be human in what you talk about. Use photos and videos in abundance, which appears to be, and a piece of work we've got in progress, not something that charities are particularly good at yet. Words they still love, photos and particularly videos not so much. Take risks and try things out. See what works. The great joy of social media is you try something and you see what it is that people respond to. And woo influencers, all those people, both the celebrities and the people who make a living out of it. How can you use some of them to get your message across as an organization? That's it for this short run through of our report. I hope that's been useful. You can see that we got some caveats here on methodology if you want to go to our PDF or the presentation online. But I hope you really enjoyed it here and thank you very much for what you have been listening to today.